Hello, and welcome to Building Leadership Community Podcast. I'm your host, Dora Mendez. I am the founder and CEO of Coach Dora LLC. Our guests will be entrepreneurs, small business owners, and community leaders that drive social impact. It can be lonely at the top, but it doesn't have to be. Hello, and welcome to Building Leadership Community Podcast. I'm your host, Dora Mendez. I'm really excited about today's episode. But before I introduce today's guest, I want to thank all our listeners and viewers. And if you're new to our podcast, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell there so you can get a notification of when new episodes air. And so I don't know, I have so much to say, but since launching Building Leadership Community Podcast, the journey has been nothing short of transformative. As a champion of inclusive leadership, growth, and connection, Season 2 is all about deepening the conversations and expanding our impact. At its core, Building Leadership Community Podcast is about fostering authentic leadership and empowering professionals to build stronger, more engaged communities. You'll hear that word a lot today, engaged. Every episode dives into strategies, insights, and personal stories that help leaders navigate their leadership journeys with confidence and purpose. Get ready, everyone, because I'm absolutely buzzing with excitement to introduce you to today's phenomenal guest. She is a true visionary in the world of mentorship. Her passion for empowering others is utterly infectious. Please give a massive round of applause for the incredible Alison Martin, the founder and chief program officer of Engage Mentoring. Welcome to the stage, Alison.
Hi, Dora. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm going to put you on a spot. I'm going to say more nice things about you. And if you're listening and if you're viewing, thank you again. Now, even more through our connection has been through the digital world. Our connection has been through the digital world, really. I think this is like the first time we've been like one-on-one virtually. But your dedication to creating truly impactful mentoring relationships shines through in everything you do. Honestly, it has been so inspiring to witness. And while I am counting down the days until we finally meet in person this summer, some incredible news. Alison has invited me to join the executive committee of her company, executive committee of Engage Mentoring, New York region, because I'm in New York. And where are you? Where are you based out of?
I'm in Charlotte, but the company is headquartered in Indianapolis, but I'm physically in Charlotte.
This organization's mission is empowering leaders through meaningful connections, that deeply resonate with everything Coach Dora stands for. And I am beyond thrilled to serve as an ambassador for the program that so brilliantly cultivates leaders through mentorship. Today, we're going to learn more about you, Alison. Can you tell us a little bit more about your leadership journey and how you got to be the founder and chief program officer of Engage Mentoring?
I would be happy to, because as you get to a stage in life where you get to look back retrospectively and it all sort of makes sense. And I'm at that stage now and just so thrilled with our partnership for Engage New York and everything that we get to do together, aligned in our missions to really help impact companies. So my background actually was in nonprofit. So I started out very early in higher ed. And then I went to work for a large voluntary health organization doing in a fundraising role. And at the time, I worked in the schools that did fundraising for our national programs. And within about a year and a half, I got promoted into a regional vice president role. And about 6 months after that, I was tapped to be the executive director. And at that time, I was 29 years old and I had
Wow,
34.
you were an executive. Let's pause there for a moment because that's a big deal. Under 30, you were an executive director under 30.
It was a big deal. It was one of those things that was sort of surreal because at the time I was managing a multi-million-dollar campaign. We had 34 employees in our office, and I worked with a 23-member board of directors in the Indianapolis area. And at the time, I remember the Indianapolis Business Journal came out with a spread about the 50 most influential leaders. I was not one of them, but I knew most of them because of my role in that nonprofit. And that was when I first kind of had the spark of an idea. And I'll share with you a little bit more than maybe you were asking for. But I actually had a very challenged upbringing. So despite my early career success that I just shared, I was actually out on my own when I was 16, and I was emancipated at 17 and had a child at 18. And so I share that with you because my early career success had everything to do with mentors who saw my potential and poured into me. And then I find myself, I'm not even 30 yet, and I have a almost 12-year-old, right? I have a board of directors I'm reporting to, and staff that I'm managing a multi-million-dollar campaign. And it was on one hand, I was awestruck by the influential leaders that I had direct access to, and the mentorship that I received because they were also down to earth, philanthropic, and willing to share their perspective. And at the time, I thought, gosh, if more women in particular in my age category had this access, I was just really grateful for it. And yet my age counterparts, many of them were just starting their careers, just starting thinking about starting a family, and I was in this different stage. And so that led to the development and ended up launching a nonprofit. And the entire intent was really to connect women at all stages of their careers to seasoned executive women, because I was so inspired and moved by the women that I got to interact with on a regular basis. And like I said, I just thought, and at the time, I'll share with you too, the direct reports I had were all women. And one by one, I brought them into my office and I said, what do you see for your future? What do you want? What are your career goals? And none of them wanted my job. And I said, "They're so thinking,
Well, I find that so interesting.
yes,
It's so interesting that you said no one wanted your job because, and I know this was years ago, but you're such a shining example, right? So you're an empowered woman, empowering women. So I'd love
well,
to
and
hear more. Tell us more. Tell us
I did.
more.
I asked questions. I said, why? What about, because I had children, right? And at that point I was married, but I was balancing the things that they were thinking about. And for whatever reason, it was I don't want that responsibility. I can't imagine doing that role, and I'm thinking about having children someday. Those types of things, that those were the things that were coming up. And I reflected on that a lot because I felt at the time that there was this perception that if you move into leadership roles, it's going to require double the hours. So we're all in this place where we're balancing so many things and we think I can't possibly do more. And so I found in my area that a lot of the women I was working with were almost opting out of those future opportunities. And I was really passionate about, and I also know I had experienced my own bias and setbacks and challenges and things like that. And when I started the nonprofit and we started sharing stories, that was common, right? It was, and yet I believe I had the early success that I'd had, both because I had mentors and sponsors before I even knew what that was. And at the same time, I was always very intentional about what my goals were, and I was an advocate for myself. And again, nobody told me to do that, but I was very ambitious, and I wanted to grow, and I made that known. So the nonprofit that we developed ultimately wanted to construct a mentoring program. And at the time, we didn't find the technology. We wanted to figure out how to scale it and make it work, and didn't find the technology on the market that we needed to be able to construct it. So I started an LLC, contracted a developer to create a platform, and realized it had other applications. And from that point, after leaving the nonprofit that I had founded in 2015, I took the technology into workplaces. And in the beginning, it was constructing programs from scratch with really, really big companies. And then we realized that there are so many small to mid-sized companies that were really missing out. And mentorship done well is nothing short of transformative when it comes to workplace culture. And it really starts with leaders. It really starts with leaders, and we believe that helping companies have a strong pipeline of leaders will help save more companies the pain that comes with promoting someone into a leadership role, much like I was, without really preparing them for what it takes to be a leader. And as you know, when you move people into leadership roles, they're drawing on different skill sets. And we believe that preparing people ahead of time for those roles is so critically important. And it has a profound impact on culture and belonging and all those amazing things in
and
terms of
and
helping
setting
companies to
and
attract
setting
talent.
people up for success and setting
Exactly.
people up for success. And so I just wanted to go back on something you said about balancing, because I found I have two children, 10-year-old and a 8-year-old, and I found that as I was climbing the ladder to getting to chiefdom, getting into that C-suite. I found that when I had my children, I actually was more disciplined and more efficient with my time, because I had to get home to tuck them in, to make sure they brush their teeth. And then when COVID hit, we were all in our little bubble. They were growing up, and I was listening to them go to school, which was fantastic.
Can't even imagine.
And I was like, I listened to my son learn how to read. And that's where I started saying, I like this. I like the freedom.
Mhm.
Um, and that's where I kind of started with my own, like, I think I want to start my own business. And I was scared, of course.
Yeah.
But I was like, I like this. I like being home with my kids. I like being able to see them grow up, because they're only little once.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have to sacrifice. I can do it. I could work really hard. I can run my own business. I can take care of things at home. And it's through mentors, because I had great mentors who showed me that you're actually more disciplined and more efficient with your time because you're a mom. Like, being a mom is actually an asset, not a deficit.
Yeah.
You know. So I appreciate you sharing that story. It meant a lot to me to hear that story, and I think our listeners and viewers will appreciate it.
Yeah, I believe that to be true, Dora. I think that the more you balance, the more efficient you have to become, and letting go of this idea that everything is perfect. Because in the wheel of life, regardless of what you're balancing, there is no real balance. It's more about prioritization. And I used to say that, and I actually don't think I came up with this on my own. I think it was something that was shared with me from one of my mentors. But sometimes especially when I was working, in an executive role and didn't have as much autonomy over my time as I do now. Two things I'll mention. One is, as a leader, I felt like I did have a lot more flexibility than a lot of others. So I credit my ability to show up for my kids in the way that I did to being moving into those leadership roles. So it was okay for me to, and this was before people were working from home everywhere, but it was okay for me to take off in the afternoon to take my child to the doctor, because I had a track record. They knew I was going to be working at 11
Yeah, you
o'clock at night
weren't punching a
sometimes.
clock.
No,
When
right,
you weren't
right.
punching a clock. And so that's a big difference
Yeah,
between being a leader and between being a manager and a non-manager. You're not punching a clock when you're a manager, so you have much more flexibility with your time.
yeah,
And so that's another myth to dispel about
yeah.
um, being a parent and leadership. You actually have more flexibility in leadership. So I thank you for lifting that up.
I agree. And well, and the piece I was going to share that my mentor had said was sometimes my family wins and sometimes my work wins. And so there were examples where I was able to take off in the middle of the day to run and take care of one of my children, or to be present for something, their honor roll, or some sort of recognition. And then there were times, one that I will never forget, which was my daughter was in a play, and when the information came through, I already had a trip planned to Dallas that I absolutely could not move. And I sat down and I said, baby, I'm so sorry. I can't come to this. And that year for Christmas, she gave me it was a DVD at the time of her performance. And it,
Oh,
it broke
that's
my
so sweet,
heart,
though. That's
but it
so
was so
sweet.
sweet. And, I struggled with guilt for things like that as well. But I am on the other side of this now. I can say I've got a 29-year-old and a 23-year-old, and they are incredible humans that I could not be more proud of. And I am also proud of the example that I showed them. I mean, I wasn't perfect. No, nobody is, but I feel like we had to have a lot of really authentic conversations about priorities, and this thing about work isn't this
Yeah, but you put
ambiguous
them through
thing.
college,
Yeah.
so I think
They're
they're going to give you some grace.
they did, and I'll tell you, there was one time that I sat them down over the dinner table, and because they were complaining about something related to work, and I said, hey, basically I can take a different job that would require less, but our lifestyle would change significantly.
Yeah,
And they did not want
yeah,
it. So
you like going on vacation. You
yeah,
like,
exactly.
going to college. So, it's all a balance.
Yeah. So, but I just think, like any other relationship, even with your kids, communication is key. And I do believe that it's incumbent upon all of us to chart whatever path we feel called to do. And I know one of the things we're going to talk about is purpose, but it really does feel amazing when you know that you're living in your purpose and doing work that you were put here to do with really great people. And that's the message that I think the leadership journey really does light that path. And I'm just so appreciative of what you're doing to put this out to the world too.
Thank you. So let's continue building incredible communities, one meaningful episode at a time. So, Allison, can you tell folks? Well, first of all, I want to go back to something that you said about technology. Can you share a little bit more about what engaging mentors do? Because you're a trailblazer. You're kind of ahead of the curve. Now everyone's talking about AI and tools, but you were really ahead of the curve. Can you share a little bit more about the platform that you created?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for saying that. So I'd referenced it earlier. We developed a platform that essentially allows participants to select mentors based on topics. And there's a scheduling tool and all sorts of resources to help construct that. But what's really magical is, and I speak a lot of times on behalf of the organization about why most mentoring programs fail. And a lot of times there's lack of training, there's lack of context, there's lack of learning outcomes that we can track. And yet mentoring is a powerfully efficient way of learning. And the byproduct is the relationships that develop. But unfortunately, in most programs, they focus so much on the relationship that they fail to track the learning outcomes. And when you think about how we develop leaders, it truly is. There are a couple of things that I want to share. One is, you said it earlier, it's lonely at the top. So the higher you go, the more critical mentoring becomes, the harder it can be to access. So our program provides an outlet for leaders to connect with other leaders. And then at the same time, when you think about high potential employees who maybe aren't in a leadership role yet, what do you do as an organization? How do you really prepare them? Right? You can take them through some classroom training, and there are great tools and resources and courses that people can take. but the tactical learning of not only connecting and developing relationships with leaders and learning on topics related to leadership, but also teaching them how to develop those skills and pour into others really is transformative in terms of the worldview that people develop as even before they've stepped into that leadership role. And I don't know how else you actually prepare people than by teaching them how to mentor and how to pour into others. And so it really is a beautiful thing. So the software facilitates the matching and the scheduling. Our team manages it from end to end, and so we like to say that we work with clients and we want them to see us as an extension of their team, whether they have 5 people in the program or 5,000. We manage it for them, so we're not overtasking their HR department, but we truly do deliver results that we can measure. And again, when I think back to my first leadership role that I was promoted into, I didn't have any, I was promoted so quickly that I really didn't have any preparation. And they did some great things to, they brought in a coach to work with me and that sort of thing on the back
You
end.
brought in a coach
But
like me to.
they did. They did. And I needed it, believe me, Dora. And so I reflect on how important this is and how this is a very real issue for organizations.
So I really like what you said, that mentoring, and I think there's some myths that we can dispel, that mentoring isn't just talking, because I think that you said it, when why programs fail, because of your platform you can measure outcomes. And
Hmm.
I think the measure, like the measurability, the measure, some people don't think you can measure like the relationship, and they think it's just talking. So I really I think that's what makes your platform unique and why it's so
Yeah.
special. And so yeah, I think that's great. So I want to give you some time. If you could, you talked a little bit about like what you would tell yourself, your younger self, but could you share what you, any advice, like if you could give like one good piece of advice to future leaders, the next generation of leaders, what would that be?
My piece of advice would be to reach out and learn as much as you can. You don't need a formal mentoring program to access mentors. And so if you think about where you want to go, think about the relationships that you could cultivate so you can really learn and shortcut your learning. And again, expand your worldview a little bit, because our worldview has everything to do with everything that we've experienced up until today. Right. And so that's where we are. When you work with a mentor, you really can shorten your learning path, if you will, and at the same time start to think about what skills you need to develop to move into the roles that you want to move into, and your plan for developing those skills. Do that now. I don't, whether you're brand new to the workplace, if you have your sights set on wanting to grow as a leader, my advice is to learn as much as you can and to be intentional about the relationships that you develop, and to be intentional about your own learning and development, so that you can grow in those particular skill sets and be as effective as possible, so you can go as far as you possibly can.
That's great advice. So can you please share with our listeners and viewers how they can learn more about Engage Mentoring, about you, and how they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So first of all, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me there. But engagementoring.com is where you can learn more about the program that we referenced earlier, the Engage program, which is for leaders and high potentials, as well as our mentoring certification, which even an individual can sign up for. So if you're looking to advance your skills as a mentor or even as a mentee, we've got some resources there for you to take advantage of. And engagementoring.com is the best resource for that.
Thank you for sharing that. And so I also wanted to share, I have a copy of this Learning to Lead Through Mentoring, Alison Martin, which you gave me a copy of the other day, and I love it. It's a great workbook. It's got like, I was like writing in it and like taking notes. It's wonderful. It's like, it's a workbook. This is like, instead of like a textbook, you mentioned, you mentioned, this to me is it's almost like a textbook, but a guidebook, which is great. So thank you for sharing that with me, and I hope folks go and go out and get it. Alison, thank you so much. It means so much that you were here today.
Thank you so much, Dora. It's wonderful to be here.
You've been listening to Building Leadership Community. Watch on YouTube at Coach Dora and listen wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube at Coach Dora and visit me on the web at CoachDoraMendez.com. Hosted by me, Dora Mendez. Produced by Dora Mendez and Dylan Rogers. Graphics, editing, and sound mixing by Dylan Rogers.